This is what our woodworking shop looked like before the extra lighting that we're adding in today's episode. And this is what it looked like after. Today's episode is all about getting us a few steps closer to not working on the shop quite so much and get us to that place where we can start working in the shop. So yes, believe it or not, we've got more lighting, we've got trim, we've got insulation, and a handful of other things that have been on that, we'll get that done some other day list. Well, today's the day. Stick around. So if you're familiar with our DIY projects here at the channel, you know that one of our running themes is upcycling and recycling, and this trim project is no exception. All of this trim, actually, just like the trim that we used in Renee's art studio, this is all leftover stuff from the house build. You order it, I guess, like case at a time. It's not like precisely measured out to exactly what will go into the house, and there was a bunch of stuff left over that I just couldn't bring myself to watch go into the dumpster. We had aspirations, we didn't even know how it was going to unfold or when it was going to unfold, of doing these maker spaces in part of our barn. The barn wasn't even up when the house went up. The barn came along a year later. So anyway, all of this trim has been stacked up here on the floor for the better part of 5 years, no, going on 6 actually. So you can imagine how excited I am to have this up off the floor and some momentum behind actually getting it installed, just if for no other reason than to free up the floor space. But then as far as upcycling, recycling, the paint also is no exception that we're using today. This is all paint that is various shades of gray all dumped together and stirred together to make whatever shade it turned out to be. But you can find really cheap paint in the oops pile, as we like to call it, at Home Depot. People had something mixed and went, oops, that's not quite right. So they put it out there for cheap. To get a gallon of paint for like 15 bucks is crazy. Well, what's crazy is how expensive it is normally. 60 some dollars for like a freaking gallon of paint. It's nuts. So you can also find unwanted paint on any of the classified sites. Check out your local buy-sell pages on Facebook Marketplace, or another great app that I love to use when I'm searching for materials and supplies is OfferUp, Craigslist, you name it. Different ones seem to be hotter and more utilized in different communities. So if you're not acquainted with some of those resources in your area, start getting acquainted, and you'll soon get a feel for which ones people tend to gravitate towards and where you're more likely to find the stuff that you need. Lots to do today. I'm going to go for 2 coats of this gray, and we'll get after getting the trim actually installed. So I've got just a scrap here of the molding that I'm planning to use around the doorways here, but before I can get after installing it, there's a little problem to solve. If you were with us back with the video when we actually installed these partition walls and the door jambs and whatnot, you'll recall that we chose to clad the walls with OSB instead of sheetrock. Well, one little side effect of that I had no idea was coming is it turns out that the overall thickness turns out to be a little bit skinnier than what it would be with sheetrock, and I'm assuming that that's the case because the door jambs sit a little bit proud of the surface of the wall. So what that means is when you add the molding, there's this extra shadow line because this is proud of the wall. So to mitigate that extra shadow line, the idea that I had was to use my good old faithful freehand router with a long straight cutting bit and a follower bearing, and that little follower bearing rides down the wall while the cutter shaves off that extra little bit of width on the door jamb here. I might make it better, I might make it worse. One of the additional challenges is OSB, of course, is bumpy. So this little follower bearing is going to want to follow every single little lumpy, bumpy bit of texture of the OSB. So something to mitigate that, I thought about doing a couple of layers of masking tape to at least make it a little bit smoother. I'm expecting it's still going to be a little bit bumpy, but then maybe go after it again with the sander. So that's the plan. Again, I might make this better, might make this worse, say a prayer. Let's see how this goes. So puzzles within puzzles to solve here in the process of getting set up for this. It dawned on me that the base of the router here, so the distance from the edge of the cutter to the distance from the edge of the base is wider than the distance from the edge of the door jamb to the rib up the middle of the door jamb. So in order to make this whole concept work, I had to add a little piece of just a standoff here so that the router could actually ride, part of the base of the router could actually ride on that rib up the middle of the door jamb. So I'll show you how I attach that with CA glue and just used masking tape so I'm not gluing directly to the router base. So we're finally set up to give this a go. Actually, I did a quick test down this side and it went okay, but let's go ahead and run the top, see how it goes. So on my first little test, I actually had the presence of mind to have a hat on, but in the heat of the moment of talking to y'all, I forgot to add the hat. So anyhow, so this is going pretty well. It's still a little bit bumpy despite the masking tape. I figure I'll come back and hit it with the orbital sander just to knock some of that down and make it a little bit better. I planned to double back and do a little bit of touch-up painting anyway, so I figure even just goobering the paint in whatever sort of a seam or opening there is will hide a lot of sins. So this is going as well as it can be. I have to keep in perspective. This is a shop. This is a shop. It's not where I live. And anyway, where is that line between how picky do I get as far as how presentable it is? So that line continues to move. I continue to waffle on where not to obsess and where to go, you know what, it looks okay because it's just my shop. Anyhow, so the other thing about the radius of the base is that I can only go just so far, and there's a little bit that I'm not able to cut. So I have to come back there with just a handsaw and take off that last little bit. And it's going as well as it could, I think. I feel like whether I was making this better or worse, I think it's going to be better. Now, one thing about when we did trim last year in the art studio is that it was a big empty room, whereas the wood shop here, this has been very much inhabited and at least a semi-functioning shop for quite some time. So what that means is in order to put in baseboard, I'm going to need to be moving everything out away from the walls. Now, the good news is I actually don't have enough baseboard to go all the way around the shop. I have, what, 3 14-foot pieces. So the idea here, again, is just using up what was left over from the build of our home 5 years ago, rather than see that material just go to a landfill. So for the sake of appearances, I think where I want to prioritize is I'd like to see baseboard running away from either side of the door trim. So we'll use up what we've got and focus there, and then I'm not sure where I'll use the last piece. We'll take it as it comes. Fast forwarding just a little bit here, the baseboard molding and the door trim work is done. There was a couple of really good side effects from this project, along with getting the trim installed, of course, at long last. Yes, I had to pull things away from the walls and sweep, and that kind of led to some decluttering activities. So just in general, my shop right now is just that much more of a habitable place to be in and work in. If you don't look too closely, you can't see some of the janky things that I had to do to install the door trim. But in general, I really am enjoying how it just sort of frames out and gives that little touch of refinement to the room. And I was actually kind of surprised how far the material that I had went after using up the 3 full-length sticks and then just butting together the scraps along one spot. The only place that really doesn't have any trim is along this very back wall. There's just a little chunk of it there, and then it stops about 3 feet in, but it's along this wall that does not have any baseboard trim. Now, the other thing that I was hoping to get to during this video and this time frame is to trim out the windows. The whole idea is just to get rid of the raw 2x6 construction lumber kind of a look. And as you all know, I really love to raid the coal pile at Home Depot for orphaned materials that are not quite saleable for what they were originally intended for. But I did indeed go to Home Depot and have been kind of watching and waiting, but haven't really found anything that's quite suitable for this. The materials that we got to frame out the windows over in the studio, we actually used up what was there. So I'm not so desperate to get this done that I feel like spending the money on brand new materials just to work on this. So I will continue to watch and wait, and we will do that another time. Seeing the outlet box and the plate cover there does remind me that there are 2 more outlets that I just need to get installed along this wall. We'll probably squeeze that into this video, but not quite at this moment. But we are going to turn our attention to something electrical, and that would be lighting. Now, if you've been following our channel for a while, you're saying to yourself, what? You did your lighting a long time ago. That was part of the early stages of the build out of this workspace here beneath the loft in the outbuilding. And you're right, that would be true. When we did the initial lighting installation, that was pretty much the first thing that we did in this space after the partition walls were up. And I was really elated with how bright it seemed in here. But now that I've been actually working in this space, I find that, well, to be blunt, I did it wrong. This workstation, for example, this is an assembly table area, sort of a space. I find myself that, like, if I'm working over here, I'm trying to see a pencil line, for instance. There's a lot of shadows, and I'm chronically walking over here under the light to be able to see. And you can kind of see it. This wall here is like really well lit, which, I mean, yes, I get some reflected light off of it, but lighting the wall doesn't help me much. If you look at this wall, you can see there's a dead spot in the lighting between this fixture and the adjacent fixture. So now that was just the scenario of this one workstation. However, I'm finding that pretty much the same thing is true throughout the shop. Now, here on this side of the room, you can see same situation. I was consistent, at least, right? The lighting fixtures are mounted about 12 inches out from the wall. And again, the wall itself is lit really well. And by design, the walls are white, and we get lots of good reflected light off the walls, but it's not quite enough to make up the difference for where I'm actually working. So at the table saw, for instance, even just on this side of the fence, it casts a shadow, and it, you know what, folks, it seems to come down to being able to see pencil lines. And again, I'm coming over here to be able to see, which just ain't working out. So if you move on to this corner of the room with my cable reel workstation, if you didn't see the video where we built this, I'll leave a link to it up here. But if you saw that video, you know that this thing is on wheels, so that if I need to work at these sanders, which are far less often used, I can pull this out and work back there, and the placement of the lighting works out pretty well for that. But where I'm working most often is this small drill press. And you can even see, once again, the wall is lit up really great. But by the time we're over here, I'm in the shadows. This is dark. All kinds of shadows being cast trying to film here. You've even seen that when I've been trying to film things at this drill press. I've gone to extra measures of throwing auxiliary lighting at it to make up the difference, but it's hard for me to see, let alone you guys be able to see when I'm trying to film something over there. So I have reshot this segment of the video 3 different times as I've been thinking through the problem out loud and exactly how to solve it. And what I've arrived at is this. If it were just me working in here, I think what I would do is relocate the light fixtures that I've got so that they come into the room a little bit more and that they're more strategically placed for where the work happens. But since you guys are joining me here as well, and I'm filming in here, I'm kind of excited about this. I have more of these fixtures, as I mentioned, so I think what we're gonna do, guys, is actually just add 3 more fixtures up the middle of this half of the room and 3 more up the other side of the room where we began this little discussion. So that is the next task at hand. So all the extra light fixtures from the lot that we purchased have been stored up in the loft. I went ahead and brought 6 of them downstairs and cleared off my assembly table. It's time for the first patient, because we need to go through all 6 of these and check them out in terms of what's under the hood. Now, I'm fairly sure that we touched every one of these back when we were picking the first batches of them to be installed for the shop and the studio. But it's been long ago enough, I don't remember what the status of these are. Okay. All right, so I can already tell this one hadn't been touched. And the way I can tell that is the fact that the ballast is still here and all the wires running to it are in place. So with our first go-round of setting up for lighting here in our creative spaces, I know there's a number of these where I have already yanked the ballast and have everything wired and ready to go for the LED conversion. But this one still needs that treatment. So I'll put a link up high for the video when we did lighting over in the studio, during which I did a tutorial on how to prep the fixture for LED, but I'll go ahead and recap it here as well really quick. We're just gonna clip all the blue wires really close to the ballast, and I'm actually gonna clip all of these as well. Because at that point, the ballast is literally dead weight. So that comes out of the picture. So once this guy's mounted up in the ceiling, you'll have a piece of Romex wire coming into the fixture that essentially goes back to the breaker panel, and it's got a black, a ground, and a white wire to it. So what we'll end up doing inside the fixture here is we'll connect the black wire to these blue wires that run into the fixture, and then we'll connect the red wire to the white wire from the feed going back to the breaker panel, and then green, of course, goes along with the bare wire, which gives us a ground. And that's all it really takes to convert this guy to make it LED ready. So I went into quite a bit more depth on this topic in the video that I linked to a moment ago. So there's some extra considerations around converting an old school fixture like this to run modern energy efficient LED tubes. I won't redo all of that material here in this video, but definitely I would encourage you, if you want to learn more, go back and watch that video from a couple years ago when we were doing lighting over in Renee's art studio. All right, so that's 1 down and 5 to go. Once we get all 6 fixtures prepped, we'll get after getting them hung and wired in. And of course, all this is giving me flashbacks from a couple years ago. So I had to pick up some more of these 1x3 boards. These are what we used for runners to mount up to the ceiling first, and then we mount the lights to those runners. All right, so the rundown on this little mounting system, we get our little runners mounted to the ceiling first, and we want them spaced in such a way that then we can mount the lighting to the runner. Now, we already know the distance from where this light's gonna be from the light fixture adjacent to it, and rather than fiddle with a tape measure, for mounting every single light, we went ahead and cut just a little gauge board so we can use that to determine the location of the first board. And then before we mount the second runner, we have yet another spacer. All right, so we're all out of the little boards except for this spacer. So since we're out of boards, we must be done. So yeah, all those sites where you see the pairs of these, there's going to be a freaking light fixture there. It's going to be like bright enough to do surgery in here. Not that I would do surgery in here. So, all right, so we just used the nail gun to kind of tack them in place for now, but I need to double back. These light fixtures are heavy, so I need to double back and actually screw them in. That'll just take a few minutes, and then we can put the light fixtures themselves up, yeah?
Yeah, you could put the light fixtures up. Yeah, I may need to ask for help for that one. I have a shoulder thing going on, so we're gonna call in my stunt double, Josh, my son, to help David.
You suffered through putting the first set up with me a couple years ago, but yeah, they're heavy and they're awkward and then yeah. So the
a lot of overhead.
The stunt double is fine. So.
And you'll be done a lot faster. Probably.
Whichever, we'll see. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
awesome. Huge thanks to Josh for coming by to help me actually get the fixtures mounted to the ceiling. We got all 6 of them hung in right about 40 minutes, just under that. So actually went pretty quickly. Super grateful to have the extra pair of hands. Thank you, Josh, if you're watching. So this would be my window of time to give you a before shot, because the next thing to do is actually wire these in. So I'll go ahead and get all of them wired in, and then we'll do an after shot just to get the full effect of what the additional lighting coverage does in here. I'm so pumped. I thought I'd bring you along while I wire up the first one. Easy peasy. 1 down, 5 to go. And with all the fixtures wired up and the tubes installed, this is the impact of adding 6 more fixtures to the 9 that were already in this room. I love it. It's unbelievable. Now, things will look a little bit different once I add the diffusers, deflectors, reflectors, whatever these are called. Once these are in the picture, things will look a little bit different, but I wanted to experience them kind of raw and unfiltered for just a little bit. Now the tubes that we're using, I'm gonna put a link to these in the description. I did quite a bit of homework before I chose these. And so these are from Parmida, I believe is how you pronounce it. Parmida LED Technologies. They come in a case of 20. The things that I like about them, they're pretty cost effective. They work out to about $5 a tube. But the nice thing is these will run in a fixture that's been converted, like you saw me do earlier, bypassing the ballast so that they will only work with LED tubes. They will work in a fixture that's been converted, but if it's a fixture that still has its ballast in place, they're compatible with that scenario too. Also, there's a couple of other different variations on how fixtures are wired. What you saw me do, these are double-ended, so there's power coming from the fitting on both sides. Some fixtures can be wired such that they're single-ended, and what's in the other end is just a holder, really, just a little clincher to kind of hold it in place. So if you've got a single-ended fixture, these tubes will work in that scenario too. So they put out a heck of a lot of light. I don't know how many lumens. I'm sure it says 2,484 lumens. Anyhow, good performance, good performers, pretty economical, and super versatile for whatever situation you're in with regard to the nature of the light fixture. All right, that's enough of that. That's enough. Okay, that guy talks a lot. Wow. All right, so we're going to go and wrap it up there today for today's episode, and we'll pick it up from there next time we get together, which will actually be very soon, to finish up all of this work of finishes and trim and whatnot here in the woodshop. I know we don't post terribly often here on He Said, She Shed, but that's just the nature of our projects. Of course, lots of YouTube channels. The cadence of what they do is something that makes sense to post once a week or even more often than that. But I do have a full-time job and real life outside of my woodshop. I wish I could hang out here all the time. But things other things get in the way of that discretionary, those discretionary time projects. So what you're seeing with these 2 episodes is actually events that have been compressed over 2.5 months, actually, of drips and drabs of time of chipping away at doing all these things. But I am really pumped about getting, yes, that much closer to not working on the shop quite so much, and some more projects of working in the shop and building things. I'm excited about those projects. I hope you are too. So thanks to all of you who have hit the notification bell and the subscribe icon so that when we do post, notification bell, subscribe button, yeah, those, button all the buttons. That's what I'm saying. Even the share button that one too. So yes, so that when something does drop, you're keyed into that and you can drop by and see what's been going on here at He Said, She Said. So as for today, that's about it, but I did save a few minutes for outtakes, so I will leave you with those, and we'll see you again real soon. Take good care, and part 2 will be coming at you just before you know it. So you'll recall we did a video a while back now where we trimmed out all the pretties in Renee's art studio. Well, up to now, all those sorts of things have been neglected over in the woodshop side of the He Said, She. See, I can't even say it. It takes practice. You try it, okay? He Said, She Said. Anyhow. What?
I tripped over the hoses again.
Okay. Stop it. I thought you were like loving on me there or something for just a minute. Just
That was aggressive. That was aggressive. I'm falling.
I'm so glad you're here. Okay. And after they're all wired up and all the tubes are installed, this is the impact of adding. Again.